I wish to tell 2-3 examples so that you will connect with the lecture easily. Few years back, I went to Kerala to give a guest lecture. There, I met a farmer. He produces pepper in his small piece of land. He told me that he is planning to perform the daughter's marriage with the income which he will get from pepper. He wanted to sell his pepper product and he wanted to gain some profit out of it, and he wanted to perform the daughter's marriage. And I asked him, what is your expectation in pepper? He told, if I sell now, I'll get 1 lakh rupees. Somebody told me that within 3 months, the prices are going to increase. Now I have stored my pepper and the prices may go up to 1.5 lakhs. 50,000 might increase. There can be an increase of 50,000 rupees of my product. So I'm waiting to sell at a right time. After 2 months, while discussing news in the class, I read a news. Pepper prices have fallen heavily, very badly, because there was a dump of pepper from a Southeast Asian nation to India. Particularly, Kerala farmers got hit. Immediately, I remembered that pepper farmer who was anticipating price hike and storing his pepper to sell at a later date. And with that profit, he wanted to perform the marriage of his daughter. Unfortunately, I think his pepper cost was not even 1 lakh rupees. It was fallen down to 50,000 rupees because there was an excessive dump of pepper. The same thing happened to palm oil. And the similar incident happened to Gujarat, pulses and cereals. So, if you observe, unless we regulate certain things, unless we give some protection to our farmers, poor farmers, how come a country like India can protect its poor farmers and manufacturers who lead a simple life? So, just think it over. You are a farmer. You are cultivating some product hoping that you will get some benefit out of it. If suddenly cheaper products are dumped into your market from a foreign country with some free trade agreements or some trade facilitation agreements, how you are going to face the market competition out of it? How you are going to survive in the competition? This is the first question which you need to think in your mind. Second case I wish to explain. This is a case, almost 12-13 years old case, Gleevac case, or I can also call it a Genvac case. Gleevac case or Genvac case. What is this case all about? Novartis, a multinational company, manufactures a drug called Gleevac. It actually provides certain temporary relief to a type of cancer. And the drug is very costly. The medicine is very costly. And India, we have made generic version of the drug called Genvac. Novartis company filed a case against India saying that India violated patent rules. Novartis tried to evergreen the patent. India questioned and India won the case, fortunately, so that we can provide the drug at a cheaper cost by generic manufacturing titled Genvac. So, even university professors could not afford the Gleevac drug. In America and other countries, as they have lot of health insurance facilities, the drugs are provided, the medicines are provided at a free of cost or subsidized prices. Whereas in India, a common man cannot purchase such a costly drug to get some relief for his cancer. So there are numerous cases like this. Numerous cases like this. Okay. So coming back, there is an agreement called TRIPS, Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights. There is an agreement called TRIPS, Trade Related Intellectual Property Rights. TRIPS agreement. TRIPS agreement was concluded under the auspices of WTO, World Trade Organization. Even the cases related to TRIPS agreement are being overseen by WTO. Many think that TRIPS agreement comes under WIPO, but it's wrong. It comes under World Trade Organization, WTO. Coming back, what is the genesis of WTO? How WTO got originated? And what is the role of WTO, mandate of WTO? And is the WTO relevant today? This is a discussion today. First of all, at the end of the Second World War, after the Second World War, countries met at a place called Bretton Woods in America, and they have decided to create three institutions: IMF, IBRD and ITO. Immediately they could materialize IMF and IBRD, but they could not materialize ITO. What is ITO? International Trade Organization. They could not materialize ITO. They wanted to create ITO to regulate and oversee the international trade, to regulate and oversee the global trade. They wanted to establish an organization called International Trade Organization to regulate and oversee the international trade. In the name of GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, an agreement was created. It was signed in 1947. So, ITO was reframed in the name of GATT, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, and it was signed in the year 1947. GATT was signed in the year 1947. And GATT is considered as ad hoc and provisional agreement in 1948. From January 1948, it is considered as ad hoc and provisional agreement. Okay, GATT was basically signed in 1947. It have become an ad hoc and provisional. Ad hoc means a temporary, and a provisional agreement from 1948 January. Then, till 1995 January 1st, GATT was in existence. WTO was formed on January 1st, 1995. WTO actually stepped into the shoes of GATT in 1995. Then what is the difference between GATT and WTO? First of all, you should know that. Till 1995, we have GATT. From January 1st, 1995 onwards, we have WTO. Then what is the difference between WTO and GATT? GATT is ad hoc and provisional. First of all, you should know, GATT is just an agreement which is ad hoc and provisional. Ad hoc means temporary. Whereas WTO, World Trade Organization, is a permanent body. World Trade Organization is a permanent organization. It is an organization. WTO is an organization. First of all, you should know that. Second point, GATT deals only with goods. It deals only with goods. Whereas WTO deals with goods, services and intellectual property rights, etc. GATT is limited to goods. WTO deals with goods, services, IPRs, etc. It deals with goods, services, intellectual property rights, etc. And GATT is considered as a weaker agreement with respect to dispute settlements. Any international trade dispute settlements, GATT is considered as a weaker agreement. It's a weaker agreement It's a weaker system. GATT provides a very weaker system with respect to dispute settlements, international trade dispute settlements. Whereas WTO have a strong dispute settlement body and also appellate body. WTO have a strong dispute settlement body and appellate body. So in GATT, there is no proper body for dispute settlement. There is no proper systematic dispute settlement mechanism in GATT. There is no proper dispute settlement mechanism in GATT, whereas in WTO you can have a proper dispute settlement body and appellate body. Coming to WTO. See, from 1986 to 1994, Uruguay round of talks were conducted. These round of talks, Uruguay round of talks, which are held between 1986 to 1994, they are considered as the largest trade negotiations or largest trade talks in the history of the world. 123 countries attended. Largest trade negotiations or largest trade talks in the history of the world. So, largest trade negotiations are largest trade talks in the history of the world. And should also know, in 1994 April, Marrakesh Agreement was evolved out of Uruguay rounds of talks. April 1994, Marrakesh Agreement was evolved out of Uruguay round of talks. So, here you should also remember Dunkel draft or Dunkel proposals. So, Dunkel draft or Dunkel proposals 1991 is a historical turning point in the creation of WTO. Dunkel draft or Dunkel proposal is a historic turning point in the creation of WTO. I do remember when I am going to school, my father brought a small booklet to my house. That booklet was published by some communist party, and the cover page of the booklet projects a picture Dunkel and showed him as a devil. The cover page how pictures Dunkel as devil. So I do remember WTO harms poor countries. WTO harms the developing countries. Particularly, a farmer is crying and is being hanged with the WTO. I have seen the picture also in that booklet. A farmer is crying and he was in a distressed state and he was being hanged in the hands of Dunkel. That picture made me to realize that for communists, and their viewpoint is, their argument is, Dunkel's proposals, Dunkel draft, which created WTO, is harmful to farmers in the developing countries and in the poor countries. I do remember still that cover page of the booklet is, now I can recollect that picture also. I do feel very happy that in my childhood itself, I know who is Dunkel, what are the proposals he has given, and why farmers are weeping and crying just by seeing one picture, one caricature. Okay, just Dunkel is like a devil and he is hanging Indian farmers. That was a picture I have seen in my childhood. So, Dunkel draft is dangerous to farmers. But Dunkel draft is a historical turning point for the creation of WTO. Dunkel's draft is a historical turning point in the creation of World Trade Organization. WTO was formed based on Uruguay round of talks and Marrakesh Agreement, and Dunkel's draft played a key role in the formation of WTO, and it was finally formed on January 1st, 1995. January 1st, 1995. WTO's headquarters are at Geneva, Switzerland. As on today, the total members of WTO are 166. And out of 166, 162 are UN member states. There are total 166 members in WTO. Out of total 166, 162 are UN member states. Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, etc., entire European Union, etc. are in WTO. 98% of world trade is carried between these 166 states or 166 countries. 98% of world trade is between WTO member countries and members. How much? 98. Almost entirety of world trade is done by the members of WTO, is carried forward by the members of WTO. And 22 countries are still in discussions to join in WTO. 22 countries are still in discussions to join in World Trade Organization. Okay. So, there is one thing which interesting fact which you need to understand. WTO members do not require or they do not have to fully be independent countries or states. They only need to be a customs territory with full autonomy. They need not be separate sovereign country. They can be a customs territory with full autonomy. Example, Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan. They don't enjoy full sovereignty, but they have their own independent existence with respect to their own financial customs territory with full autonomy of imports and exports. That is enough to become a member of WTO. The member need not be completely a sovereign country. Example, Macau, Taiwan, Hong Kong. So, China claims these places, but still they are the separate members in WTO because they are customs territory with full autonomy. And WTO is not a UN body or UN organ. It's not a part of UN. WTO has a working relation with the UN. WTO is not a UN body or UN organ. It has a working relation with the UN. The basic purpose of WTO, why WTO was formed? The basic purpose of WTO is to oversee the global trade or international trade. Oversee the global trade or international trade. Why WTO was formed? What's the basic purpose of WTO? To oversee the international trade or global trade. So, WTO agreements play a focal role in world trade. So, WTO agreements play a focal role in global trade. WTO negotiates trade agreements under the auspices of WTO or under the guidelines of WTO. Trade agreements are overseen, trade rules are overseen, and WTO also resolves trade disputes. WTO also resolves trade disputes. First of all, you should have a clarity. So, what are the basic function of WTO? What are the basic functions of WTO? Number one, to oversee the international trade. To oversee the international trade. Number two, administering WTO trade agreements. Number two, administering WTO trade agreements. Number three, WTO acts as a forum for trade negotiations. It acts as a forum for trade negotiations. World Trade Organization acts as a forum for trade negotiations. WTO handles trade disputes. It handles trade disputes. It monitors trade policies. It monitors trade policies. And WTO provides technical assistance and training for developing countries. It provides technical assistance and training for developing countries. And World Trade Organization, WTO, acts in cooperation with other international organizations. World Trade Organization acts in cooperation with other international organizations. So, these are all the basic functions of WTO. So, if you ask me to tell in one sentence, what is the main purpose of WTO? To oversee the international trade. What is the main purpose of WTO? To oversee the international trade. And basically in WTO, if you observe, basically in WTO, there are three important bodies. Trade Policy Review Body, Dispute Settlement Body and Appellate Body. Trade Policy Review Body, Dispute Settlement Body and Appellate Body. These are important structures in WTO, important bodies in WTO. And WTO conducts its ministerial conference every 2 years. For every 2 years. And I think February 2024, the WTO 13th Ministerial Conference was held at Abu Dhabi. February 2024, World Trade Organization's 13th Ministerial Conference was held at Abu Dhabi. Okay, for every 2 years there will be a ministerial conference, regular ministerial conference. So there is no mandatory rule that it should conduct only once in 2 years. If it wants, it can even conduct every year or for every 6 months also. It is its discretion and wish. But generally, WTO conducts its entire conferences for every 2 years. Okay, its governing council ministerial conferences will be conducted for every 2 years by biennial conference. You can call it as biennial. So coming back, there are many things which we need to discuss and debate about WTO. First of all, WTO's first ministerial conference after it was formed was held at Singapore, 1996. WTO's first ministerial conference, and 13th ministerial conference was at Abu Dhabi. First ministerial conference was at Singapore, 1996. What are the important details of Singapore? We call it as Singapore issues. We call them as Singapore issues. Number 1, trade and investment. Trade and investment. Number 2, trade and competition policy. Number 1, trade and investment. Number 2, trade and competition policy. Number 3, transparency in government procurement. Transparency in government procurement. Number 4, trade facilitation. Trade facilitation. 4 issues and 4 working groups. 4 issues and 4 working groups. 4 issues and 4 working groups. So, you should know the difference between GATT and WTO, as I told you. GATT deals only with goods. WTO also deals with services. GATT is just is an agreement, ad hoc and provisional. WTO is an organization. WTO will have a strong dispute settlement systems. GATT don't have very strong dispute settlement systems. So, WTO is a very strong organization to regulate international trade, and WTO is not a member in UN, is not a part of UN, but it has a working relationship with UN. And WTO was established on 1st January 1995, stepped into the shoes of GATT. So, I think you are clear now. And for every 2 years, we have a ministerial conference. The recent ministerial conference was held at Abu Dhabi. So, these are the basics with respect to WTO, and let's continue from now on. We'll have a discussion from now on. So, trade disputes, trade obstacles and trade. What is all about trade disputes and why WTO is relevant and why WTO is important and why we should study about WTO before Donald Trump taking into office. The reason is the previous Trump era, 2017 to 2021, particularly in 2017-18, we have seen trade wars. Trade war between America and China, trade war between America and European Union. In Trump 2.0, you can see further trade wars. What is a trade war? One country imposing tariffs on other countries' exports and the other country retaliating the same. If I impose 25% tariffs more on your goods, you will impose 30% tariff on my goods. Then again, I will impose some tariffs on your exports and you are going to import my goods with a higher cost. Finally, what will happen? The rules of WTO go irrelevant. The existence of WTO will be in question. WTO operates with certain rules and guidelines to oversee the international trade. But countries, if they stop listening to the guidelines and rules of WTO, world trade will be an obstacle. We can face so many obstacles to the free trade and other things in the world. So here comes various discussions of WTO terminology, WTO rules and WTO regulations. I will be discussing various things with respect to WTO. First of all, I wish to tell you one aspect. In 2013, we made Food Security Act in India. In 2013, we have gone for Food Security Act in India. Through that Food Security Act, we want to provide subsidized food to our poor people. Almost through this Food Security Act, 62.5% of Indians will get benefit out of it. 62.5% of Indians. But in WTO, there is an agreement called AOA. AOA, Agreement on Agriculture. So, agreement on agriculture will not allow such a subsidy to be given to the food. Okay. Then, you know what happened? India was compelled to sign a peace clause with America in 2013 in order to provide subsidized food grains to our poor people. India has to sign a peace clause, a temporary clause. Till the new agreement was signed, a peace clause was signed in 2013. It was signed between India and America so as to facilitate India to go forward with India's Food Security Act to provide subsidized food to our farmers. Subsidized food to our poor people. It's not just farmers, poor people. See, the developing countries and poor countries, their demand is SSM, Special Safeguard Mechanism. SSM, Special Safeguard Mechanism. What is this SSM all about? Special Safeguard Mechanism is, see, in the developing and poor countries, there will be people who are very poor who cannot afford food. Poor farmers who cannot afford the entire agricultural costs. Poor manufacturers who cannot compete with international manufacturers. So, we expect a special safeguard mechanism which is specially designed for developing countries and poor countries to give certain support system to our farmers, etc. That is not in violation to WTO guidelines or rules. But developed countries in WTO, they are not agreeing for SSM. They want trade facilitation. They aim at TFAs. TFA means Trade Facilitation Agreement. They want no barriers in trade. They want to dump their cheap products in the poor countries and developed countries and developing countries. Developed countries wanted to have trade facilitation with developing and poor countries. They wanted to actually freely export their cheap products, subsidized products to the poor countries and developing countries. And I have given you an example of pepper farmer in the beginning. I have given an example of palm oil cultivator in the beginning, where with the trade facilitation, with more number of free trade agreements, our farmers and manufacturers, particularly who are very poor, they are actually suffering. So, India is asking, particularly in agriculture, SSM, Special Safeguard Mechanism. It is not just the voice of India, but all the developing countries. Whereas developed countries, they don't want to allow SSM. They wanted to have TFA, Trade Facilitation Agreement. The main contention is this. You should know this. So now, though recently in Financial Express March 2024 we have an article that India settled almost all its trade disputes in WTO with America, but I wish to explain you few trade disputes with America which we have and how actually India lost in WTO. One or two examples I wish to give here. There are 7 or 8 examples, but I wish to share few examples with you. We have Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission, an ambitious program towards renewable energy, towards solar energy. Under that mission, India is procuring so much of solar technology, particularly solar photovoltaic cells. And while purchasing that, India wanted to support the domestic manufacturers. So, India procured more number of solar photovoltaic cells and other equipments through domestic manufacturing. Actually, American manufacturers wanted to gain some business in India by selling certain technology to India under Jawaharlal Nehru National Solar Mission. But India prioritized the national manufacturers, domestic manufacturers, to encourage the domestic industry. And America filed a case in WTO that India is showing favoritism towards their own manufacturers and India is discriminating against American solar photovoltaic cell manufacturers and companies. Then India lost the case in WTO. India lost the case in WTO, World Trade Organization. Okay. Second example I wish to give. Few years back, America filed a case in WTO against India with respect to various export subsidy schemes floated by Indian government. See, when you are launching an export company, you want to export say fish, prawns or so many exports we do, right? So, Indian government started supporting these exporters through various schemes. Through various schemes and programs. We have n number of schemes and programs to support exporters. In order to make our exports competitive, we support our exporters. America went to WTO against almost 7 or 8 of our export subsidy schemes and India almost lost in that case also. America says that India is favoring its exporters by subsidizing its exports. Recently, last year, there is a very big issue between India and Thailand. The Thailand diplomat in UN have criticized India that India is providing MSP and food subsidies not to support its farmers but to damage the exports of other countries. And that India raised protest over that diplomat's comment and Thailand removed that diplomat. In spite of all these things, there's a rice issue between India and Thailand and Thailand is criticizing that Thailand is facing severe competition from India because India is providing subsidized rice not to help its farmers and people but to help the exporters, and India wanted to damage other countries' rice exports. That was a statement given by Thailand's diplomat. Okay, so there are many issues in WTO that were being raised in WTO. India is one of the most sued country in WTO. There are many cases against India in WTO. But India could not compromise with certain domestic policies, as you all know that. Tomorrow, if you want to start an entrepreneurship in solar photovoltaic cells, expecting government will procure some of your products. What about your manufacturing strength? If American products will be dumped into India, if Chinese products are dumped into India, if Malaysian palm oil will be dumped into India, what about our farmers and manufacturers? So, India is expecting certain SSMs, but foreign countries, particularly developed countries, they are expecting trade facilitations. This is a major key area of contention. It's a major area of contention. Okay, so coming back, 98% of the world trade is between the members of WTO. There are 166 members in WTO. Recently in 2024 February in Abu Dhabi, Comoros and Timor-Leste, 165th and 166th member. Comoros, COMOROS, Comoros and Timor-Leste, TIMORLEST, Timor-Leste. These two countries have become members. These two countries have become members in World Trade Organization. So, e-commerce in 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO. In 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO, e-commerce remains duty-free. E-commerce remains duty-free. WTO members agreed to renew the e-commerce moratorium. WTO members agreed to renew the e-commerce moratorium until next ministerial conference. Until next ministerial conference, that is 14th ministerial conference. Maintaining duty-free trade. Maintaining duty-free trade in online services, including apps, games, software, etc. The e-commerce moratorium has been in place. The e-commerce moratorium has been in place since 1998. Since 1998. Okay. No deal on global fisheries subsidies. No deal on global fisheries subsidies. No deal was made on global fisheries subsidies. Full stop. India being a low fisheries subsidizer, India do not provide much fisheries subsidies in exports. India being a low fisheries subsidizer, emphasizes that advanced fishing nations that have historically provided substantial subsidies and contribute to fish stock depletion should bear more responsibility based on polluter pays principle. So whoever already given more subsidies to fishing exports, they should bear more responsibility from now on under polluter pays principle. Next point, India has proposed that developing countries be allowed to give subsidies. Developing countries be allowed to give subsidies to their poor fishermen, to catch fish till exclusive economic zone, till EEZ, till exclusive economic zone, or up to 200 nautical miles, or up to 200 nautical miles from the shore, or up to 200 nautical miles from the shore. Okay, see, one more interesting point I wish to emphasize here. In WTO, to settle the disputes, whenever America wants to file a case against India, or Thailand want to file, or Brazil want to file a case against India, we will go to DSB, Dispute Settlement Body. If you have any grievance with respect to the decision given by the DSB, we have to go to AB, Appellate Body. But unfortunately, Appellate Body was inactive almost from last 6-7 years. You know why? In Trump 1.0, he said WTO is the worst trade deal. And America obstructed the appointment of judges or members in AB, Appellate Body. There is no proper appointments. There were lot many vacancies in Appellate Body. So, Appellate Body almost became inactive. Most of the disputes were stuck at DSB stage, Dispute Settlement Body stage. Okay, America intentionally obstructed the appointments of judges in Appellate Body. From last 6 to 7 years, Appellate Body have become almost inactive. India wanted restoration of Appellate Body. India wanted restoration of Appellate Body. India wanted restoration of Appellate Body. And 123 WTO members out of total 166, 123 WTO members finalized a deal to facilitate investment and support development. To facilitate investment and support development. This new agreement on investment facilitation, for development, aims to harness the economic potential of FDI, to boost development in poorer countries. But India argued that IFD, investment facilitation for development, falls outside the scope of WTO, as it is not a trade issue, and it goes beyond the scope of Marrakesh Agreement. See, I told you Marrakesh Agreement is a genesis agreement for WTO. which came out of Uruguay round of talks. And this IFD goes beyond the scope of Marrakesh Agreement. This is India's standpoint on IFD. This is India's standpoint on IFD. So coming to various terms and terminology that is used in WTO. Various terms and terminology. This terms and terminology is also very important with respect to our exam, even prelims exam. Terms and terminology is very important with respect to our exam, including our prelims exam. So let's go with terms and terminology, and also there are many things to discuss about WTO. First of all, MFN status, most favored nation status. MFN status. See, if you listen to the word MFN, we feel that we are favoring something. No. MFN status means I will give same preference and same treatment to you as I am giving to other trading partners. MFN status doesn't mean I am specially favoring you, specially treating you. I am giving same treatment or equal treatment which I am giving to other trade partners to you also. Okay, if you listen to the term MFN, you feel that it is showing special favor, but it is not showing special favor. It is that not showing any discrimination. I can say in the simple words, it means not showing any discrimination. So MFN, a principle of non-discrimination, a principle of non-discrimination where trade preferences, subsidies, or tariffs granted to one member country must be extended to other countries also. Granted to one member country must be extended to other countries also. MFN status ensures fairness and uniformity in global trade. Fairness and uniformity in global trade. Okay, so this is called MFN, most favored nation. For example, India extended MFN to Pakistan. Pakistan delayed in extension to MFN to India, but India suspended that MFN recently. All these things. Next, non-discrimination. Non-discrimination. It's a core WTO principle. Non-discrimination is a core WTO principle that ensures no country is unfairly treated. No country is unfairly treated in terms of tariffs, trade negotiations, or trade regulations. In terms of tariff, trade regulations, or market access. Tariffs, trade regulations, or market access. Next, rules of origin. Rules of origin. See, with some free trade agreement, if I purchase cheaper product from some country and if I start exporting those products to other country. See, for example, if I purchase cheaper palm oil from Malaysia, for example, the palm oil costs 100 rupees, I have purchased for 40 rupees from Malaysia and I started exporting for 50 rupees. Malaysia started selling the same for 60 rupees. And Malaysia is selling its own palm oil for 60 rupees. I am selling Malaysian palm oil for 50 rupees. Automatically, the product sold by me will be sold because I am selling it at a cheaper cost. So, I have taken the advantage of FTA from Malaysia. This should not happen. There is a concept called rules of origin, rule of origin. Whenever you are exporting something, you should tell that the raw materials used in that product belongs to your country. Okay, the product, the percentage of the, how much percentage of the entire product actually it is originated in your country. This is called rules of origin. I'll tell you a small example. Long back, one of my friend came from America and have gifted me some dining table mats. She told each mat costed $1 and there's a sticker. So after a few days, when my maid opened those stickers to place the mats on the table, the mats, they are shown that they are made in India. I think you got it, got the logic. America got cheaper material from India, mats from India, and they are selling it for $1 a mat, and they are of export quality. I'll tell you one interesting and sad news. The best cashew nuts from Srikakulam district, the best prawns from Godavari districts, the best fish, the best mangoes, and all the best products will be designated as export products. Okay, export goods. I can say export quality. If you open that export quality goods, you can see the finest product inside that. The tastiest mangoes, the most qualitative cashews, the most sophisticated and soft textile that will be exported from our country, and the rest all will be left to the people who actually produce them. I think you got it. In the name of export quality, we are exporting the most qualitative products. It can be a prawn, a mango, a textile, a tool, even a post qualitative polished diamond, anything. That's called export quality. When you ask something in the shop, ask them to provide, request them to provide export quality. That will be packed separately, and the half-cut cashews, the tasteless mangoes, the small-sized prawns, they are all left to us. Okay, if you observe. So for that reason, I can tell you, rules of origin is very, very important. Rules of origin is very, very, very important. And sometimes we were made to purchase our own goods at a cheaper cost in foreign countries. We were made to purchase our own products. Sometimes some textiles are cheaper in America and qualitative in America, Indian made textiles, than in India. Okay, that makes us to feel very sad of our own products, what we wear, what we eat. And almost the cost is same, but the quality changes, quality differs. Sometimes some countries will take the advantage of trade agreements and get cheaper products, and our government will give a lot of support to exports, right? So they can sell at a cheaper cost. For example, they can sell a cotton textile in export-based industry at a cheaper cost of 200 rupees, wherein which we have to purchase the same textile in India for 300 rupees. So better to purchase from America and bring it back to India. Okay, so rules of origin. Criteria used to determine rules of origin. Criteria used to determine the national origin of a product, criteria used to determine the national origin of a product to ensure compliance with trade agreements. To ensure compliance with trade agreements. It prevents misuse of rules of origin, prevents misuse of preferential trade agreements. It prevents misuse of preferential trade agreements by ensuring products genuinely originated from the exporting country. So if India is exporting, India should say this product belongs to me, or 90% of raw materials used in the product belongs to me. I have not imported the raw materials and made a product and I am not selling it to you. If at all I am selling like that, I should say 90% belongs to me or 80% belongs to me. 10% belongs to, say, some Taiwan. The same thing is being happened in semiconductor industry also. Next, Special Safeguard Mechanism, SSM. I told you. To protect our farmers, India is demanding SSM. SSM. It's a demand from developing countries. It's a demand from developing countries to temporarily increase tariffs. On agricultural imports. To temporarily increase tariffs on agricultural imports during import surges or price declines to protect whom? To protect our farmers. India is a strong advocate of SSM. So India wants special safeguard mechanism to protect our farmers. Suddenly if some goods from like pepper or cereals or pulses or rice or palm oil dumps from other countries at a cheaper cost, our farmer will get affected. So India can increase the tariffs on the imported goods so that our farmers can compete in our markets. Next, protectionism. Measures taken by a country to protect its domestic industries. Measures taken by a country to protect its domestic industries from foreign competition through tariffs, quotas or subsidies. But WTO don't allow protectionism too much. It won't allow protectionism. In various cases, it is discouraging protectionism. Let the markets be free. Let the markets be competitive. If you start protecting your own goods, international trade will get affected. Example. America imposed tariffs on Chinese aluminum and steel products to safeguard its domestic industry. Next, unfair trade practices. Selling below the production cost. What is unfair trade practice? Selling at a lower cost. Why? Why? To discourage competition. Why we go for unfair trade practice? To discourage competition. If we want to monopolize the business and discourage the competition, we go for unfair trade practice, selling at a lower cost than sometimes even than the production cost. For example, Reliance Jio, when it was launched, it was for a throwaway price. Now they started increasing the prices of Jio. Right? So this is called unfair. Ambani will come and question me if I talk like this, right? Unfair. Actions like dumping, export subsidies or discriminatory practices that distort, D-I-S-T-O-R-T, that distort fair trade. Example. WTO ruled against China's export subsidies. WTO ruled against China's export subsidies on certain products, deeming them unfair under global trade rules. Next, level playing field. Next term, level playing field. See, all countries should get equal opportunity in international trade. Ensuring that all countries, irrespective of economic capacity, compete under similar trade rules and conditions. Compete under similar trade rules and conditions. Next, TRIPS agreement. What is TRIPS? Trade related intellectual property rights. This agreement is with respect to IPRs, copyrights, patents, geographical indications, industrial designs. All these things comes under TRIPS, trade related intellectual property rights. TRIPS agreement was made under the supervision of WTO, World Trade Organization. Next, I'll discuss separate lecture on IPRs. Now we'll go forward with WTO. Okay. Next, tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. Tariff and non-tariff trade barriers. What is tariff trade barrier? What is non-tariff trade barrier? Tariff means any duty, any tax, any cess, any countervailing duty, any anti-dumping duty which you levy on your imports. It's called tariff trade barrier. For example, you are importing some electronic products from China. You are imposing more countervailing duty or tax on it. Then it is called tariff. Tariff is related to monetary things, tax. Tariff is related to monetary things, that's called tax, etc. Non-tariff trade barriers. Non-tariff trade barriers are like not related to money, not related to tax, not related to duty, but they regulate or they obstruct the trade. Example, take down. Sanitary and phytosanitary requirements. Sanitary or phytosanitary requirements. Shall I take an example and explain? India's Alfonso mangoes were banned in America and some European countries few years back because India is using artificial fruit ripener on it. This is called phytosanitary trade barrier. Our Alfonso mangoes are most favored mangoes in the world. Most of our Alfonso mangoes are not available for Indians to eat. They were exported. But there's a ban on Alfonso mangoes for some years in various countries. I'll give one more example. When Fukushima incident happened, when there was a news that nuclear waste and nuclear it was dumped into the ocean, many countries have banned purchase of fish from Japan, importing fish from Japan. This is also a trade barrier, not related to money. And next type of trade barrier, phytosanitary, environmental trade barriers. I told you Japan. Or there's one more interesting news. Few years back, there's a news in European newspaper, one European newspaper, I don't remember the name, that while fishing the tuna fish, the nets are harming the biodiversity, marine biodiversity. And some countries have banned tuna fish from India. So the fishing nets related to tuna fishing, in that fishing trawling boats, it is causing harm to marine biodiversity. Immediately some countries banned purchasing fish from India, tuna fish from India. And the third important thing, certain restrictions. There's a news that child labor is being used in weaving Kashmiri tiwachis, pashminas. And immediately some countries banned import of tiwachis or carpets from India. They are not related to tariff or tax, but they have obstructed the trade because of certain child labor issues, environmental issues, nuclear issues, or phytosanitary issues. They are called non-tariff trade barriers. I think you got it. Next, peace clause. Peace clause. It provides a temporary relief or immunity. Peace clause provides a temporary relief or immunity to developing countries from legal challenges over breaching WTO norms, breaching or violating WTO norms. Example, India signed peace clause with America in 2013 to support its Food Security Act. Its Food Security Act. Okay, so I do remember in 2016 prelims a question was asked. The terms green box, amber box, blue box subsidies are related to. The answer is WTO. The question was asked in 2016. The question is very, very easy. So now I will be explaining green box, amber box, blue box subsidies. World Trade Organization, WTO, classifies domestic subsidies. WTO classifies domestic subsidies provided by member countries into three boxes. Green, amber and blue. Green, amber and blue based on their trade distorting effects. Based on their trade distorting effects. This classification is a part of AOA, Agreement on Agriculture. This classification is a part of AOA and aims to regulate subsidies while balancing global trade fairness with domestic agricultural needs. Number 1, green box subsidies. Green means like traffic signal. They are allowed. They are no trade distorting or very less trade distorting. So green box subsidies are not trade distorting or they are very less trade distorting. Subsidies that cause minimal or no trade distortions. And are permitted without limits. Full stop. These are typically without limits. Full stop. These are typically government programs. Designed to achieve specific objectives like environmental protection, or rural development, without directly influencing production or prices. Okay, this is green box. Green box are completely allowed without any limits. These subsidies are allowed. Whatever the subsidy provided by the government, it is allowed. For example, for environmental protection and for disaster relief, whatever subsidies they allow. For research, it is allowed. Second, amber box subsidies. So, these amber box subsidies are very dangerous. So, amber box subsidies will impact the production. For example, MSP or input subsidies for seeds, fertilizers, etc. MSP, minimum support price, or input subsidies for seeds, fertilizers, electricity, etc. So, they directly impact the production. Subsidies that are considered to distort trade. The trade by influencing prices or production. So, WTO will have a serious scrutiny on amber box subsidies. WTO will impose serious scrutiny. It's not easy to come out of this scrutiny. So, amber box subsidies are not allowed more than an extent. 5%, 10%, there are certain limits, de minimis rules. Beyond that, they don't allow. Next, blue box subsidies. So, remember, amber box subsidies are very, very dangerous in WTO guidelines. Next, blue box subsidies. Like, it will impose some quota on production. Or they are linked, quota on production are linked to subsidies. For example, I'll tell you, there is one scheme in Government of India, Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, to promote organic farming. So, government says that government will support that through that program when there is a consolidation of 50 acreage of land. They will use support, but they will use, for example, PM Kisan will be given earlier only for 2-acre farmers, for example, or Raitu Bandhu will be given to the farmers only up to 5 acres. This to an extent are allowed. Unlimited support will not be allowed. For certain limits, based on certain limits, for certain causes, support will be allowed, but not unlimited. Blue box subsidies to an extent sometimes are allowed, based on the situation. For example, the farmers who have lands up to 2 acres, government will give some complete subsidy to them. These type of subsidies to an extent are allowed, but it should be based on some limitation or quota. Okay, so green box are completely allowed, amber box are highly scrutinized, blue box which are based on some limitations or quotas, to an extent they are allowed. Take down. Subsidies that are linked to production, blue box subsidies. Subsidies that are linked to production, subsidies that are linked to production, but include measures to limit production, to avoid surplus and trade distortion. Okay, so these are all the important terms which we come across in WTO, and most importantly, in WTO, India is representing the global south. There is G33 in WTO. G33. India is representing the global south. And also, India has taken a strong stance on issues such as public stock holding for food security. So India wanted to have public stock holding for food security, patent waivers for COVID-19 vaccines, etc. India has submitted proposals to curb subsidies that promote industrial scale overfishing, emphasizing sustainability and protecting small scale fishers. Next, in the era of trade wars, there is a question about relevance of WTO. And reforms in WTO. But we are living in a sovereign state system. International systems are comparatively weak when the rulers are steadfast in protectionist policies. Okay, so kindly do research on Thailand's diplomat statement on India's rice subsidies. Rice subsidies. Okay, Thailand's diplomats statement on India's rice subsidies, and the diplomat was replaced now. And I wish to tell you a point. WTO norms says that. Please take down. WTO norm says that support given should be, that the support given should be within the 10% of de minimis limit. Within the 10% of de minimis limit. Within the 10%. De minimis. De minimis. What is de minimis limit? Minimum support should not exceed more than 10%. Subsidies should not exceed. In 2019 and 2020, India gave subsidies worth 13.7% of its rice production, which is higher than the permitted 10%. So this is the issue between India and Thailand settled down with this. Next, there is also an issue between India and Brazil over sugar subsidies, but now they have settled down the issue with their collaborative efforts on ethanol takedown. India and Brazil have ended the dispute. Over sugar subsidies at WTO. The two countries are now strengthening their cooperation. In ethanol production technology. See, long back, Brazil complained to WTO that India's sugar subsidies are amounting to protectionism and unfair. And now they have settled down. They have settled down the entire issue. And most of the cases with respect to India were settled down in WTO, not through WTO dispute settlement body, but through mutual negotiations. There is an article in I think Indian Express, Financial Express. There is an article in Financial Express in February 2024. I can tell you some important points from that article. India and US have successfully resolved all 7 pending disputes in WTO. India and US have successfully resolved all 7 pending trade disputes at WTO. Okay. Key issues resolved. Number 1, poultry import dispute. One is poultry import dispute. See, our poultry is so strong, and America wanted to sell turkey, chicken legs to India at a cheaper cost. India don't allow. When India started disallowing and levying more tariffs, America filed a case against India. Poultry import dispute. Second, retaliatory tariffs on farm products. Retaliatory tariffs on farm products. Retaliatory tariffs. Retaliatory means once you impose tariffs on my goods, I will impose tariffs on your goods. This is called retaliation. India imposed retaliatory tariffs on some US agricultural imports. India imposed retaliatory tariffs on some US agricultural imports following following US tariffs on Indian steel and aluminum products. Indian steel and aluminum products. So likewise, there are 7 issues. All the 7 issues were resolved. There are 7 issues and all the 7 issues were resolved. Okay. So overall, finally, we want to have a permanent agreement on special safeguard mechanism for our farmers and poor people. But still, rich countries are not allowing that. So we need to do more work on this. I have given some outlines on some aspects of WTO. We'll continue the sessions tomorrow. Thank you.